Reading, Olympus One-Offs by Engineer Forever.
Reading, Ruthless Aggression. Another one. Percy asked as the screen changed to show the number 3. He was a little irked now. Seriously, how many Narutos are there? What's it called? Frank asked. Ruthless Aggression. Piper told him. Ares. The Olympians deduced dryly. Woo-hoo. The war god cheered. He pointed at the sole Canadian present. Jong, read, now. Why me? Because you're my kid, so do it. Frank groaned as he took the book from Piper and started to read. Get him. And it's all downhill from here, Athena said. Bah. It's obviously a fight scene. Ares' grin widened. An excellent way to start a chapter. I didn't know you knew the word, excellent. Single quote. Shish, violence is happening. His bandaged fist slammed against a cheek. The punched man flew back and splintered a wooden table beneath his weight. The sole of his boot was driven into a gut and the sorry bastard that tried to grab him from behind stumbled back into the bar. He lifted his arm to block the attempted haymaker and shattered the attacker's nose with a straight. This was such a pain in the ass. You son of a. A bottle was brought down on his head and shattered on the impact. He glared at the man that had doused him in cheap alcohol and broke a perfectly good bottle over his head. That poor bottle. Dionysus wept. He grabbed the jackass that broke the bottle by the front of his shirt and lifted him up over his head with both hands. He turned and tossed him at the steel pole that the night stripper was supposed to use. All he wanted was a drink and some entertainment. Grab this motherfucker. Bad words. Hazel shook his head. A hand latched onto his arm and he grabbed it, crushing the bones in his grasp. He pulled the assailant closer and drove his shoulder into the pit of the assailants. With a bit of force, there was a loud crack that was quickly followed by a scream. An impromptu judo toss had the man landing through another table. Now he was going to get blacklisted again. I hate when that happens, then I gotta kill someone. Ares groaned. Quote ellipsis. So much is wrong with that statement. Apollo shook his head. Fuck you. A chair smashed into his back and broke. That was irritating. He turned and grabbed the head of the bastard that smashed the chair into him. He reared his head back and brought it forward, his thick skull slammed into the man's own with a loud sickening crunch. Something broke, and it wasn't just a dumbass nose. Brain damage? Nico asked. Leo whistled. Big time. This would be the 19th strip bar he'd be banned from in this state. Shame, too. Some of these girls were hot. Worthy of being in Aphrodite's cabin, for sure. Ugh, such a demeaning place. Artemis sneered. There are plenty of male strip joints. Apollo rolled his eyes. Such a prude. I don't know whether to take it as a compliment or an insult. Aphrodite gave a confused frown. Insult. Piper scowled. She did not want to be associated with a stripper in any way. Come on, tough guy, come on. A knife slashed across his chest and cut a hole into his tap-out MMA shirt. Son of a bitch. His eyes flashed red and he grabbed the wrist of the man with the knife. His hand closed around it until bones splintered and the knife was dropped. He caught the knife, a switchblade of about maybe 8 inches, and dropped the man with a sweep of his leg. He moved the broken wrist to rest above the man's head and stabbed the switchblade into the palm. Ares' cabin everybody. Percy remarked dryly. Ah. My hand. Baby. That was nothing. Try having a hellhound's jaw digging into your shoulder. Or a black bear biting your arm. Or a fucking deer kicking you in the head when you're 6 years old. That shit hurt. I know. Ares rubbed his chin as he glared at Artemis. You deserved it. I hit on your hunter one time. Because your pillow buddy told you to. The huntress scoffed while Aphrodite whistled innocently. Note to self. His voice was dry, he didn't even get to start his drink before these machismos jumped him. Find a 12-point buck and kick it in the head. Then snap its neck. He best not. Artemis shouted. Do it. Ares argued. Oh gods. Frank and Talia groaned. Ah, my hand. Red eyes glared down at the whimpering guy pulling at the knife. He grabbed the man's head and slammed it hard into the floor. The baby was knocked out instantly. Something cold and metallic pressed against the back of his head. It felt like a small pipe, but he knew better. He lifted his arms in surrender when there was a click of a hammer being cocked. Not so tough now, huh, Blondie? It was the guy he punched into a table earlier. Seems he really took offense to being called an inbred dumbass that couldn't tell when to leave well enough alone. You're gonna die tonight, you son of a bitch. I'm gonna blow your brains out. I'd really appreciate it if you didn't call me that, he said, his hands still up in the air. What? A son of a bitch? Well, tell you what, you son of a bitch, after I kill you, I'm gonna look your mama up and fuck her brains out like a real man, the gunman said, a bit of pride in his words. Quote ellipsis. Wow, he is just asking for it. Frank blinked with wide eyes. If that had been him, the dude would be bare food. Fuck him up. Ares. Hera frowned at the scowling war god. Wow, that's what? The 8th time he's heard some dumb bastard say that. Amazing how it always manages to piss him off. You would think he would have grown some thicker skin by now. Unfortunately for the gunman, he hadn't. He turned and grabbed the gun, a small 6-shooter that looked smaller in the fat fucker's hand. He yanked it from the gunman's grasp before the trigger was pulled and turned it around. The gunman looked flabbergasted, if that was the right word. Vocabulary was never his strong suit. Grunts are usually more common in his vocabulary. Athena mocked irritably. You're just pissy that mine's cooler than yours. You're delusional. Ares, Athena, settle down. Hestia told the two war deities. And even a little afraid. Red eyes burned intensely and feral whisker-like markings pulled back as he growled. You know, all I wanted was to drink a beer and watch some nice-looking girl dance on the stage. He pressed the barrel of the still-cocked gun against the one-time gunman's temple and watched sweat form. Whimpers, please escape the wannabe tough guy, a thug that wanted to wave his dick around like it was the biggest one in the joint. So Ares every Sunday? Hermes asked. I don't wave it around the dinner table. Ares shook his head. Yeah, that's Fridays at the Cherry Bomb. Fuck you, Sunspot. Red eyes narrowed in disgust. Did you just piss yourself? Sobs left the man. Now I have to kill you. That's just embarrassing, especially for a real man like yourself. Please no. No. But, aren't you a real man? So, he should die like one. Jason asked. Ares nodded. How the world works. He's deluded. Hera frowned. No. No. Please. I don't wanna die. He tisked in disgust and moved the gun down to rest at the man's damp groin. Don't wanna die, huh? That is evil. Percy gaped. Ares grinned. That means it's good, Jackson. No. No. Bang. The man shuddered and slumped to the ground, his eyes went to the hole in his thigh before he screamed. Ah, he should have popped one. Ares whined. Ugh, gross. Frank grimaced as he turned the page. Shut up, boy, you could learn something here. Frank highly doubted that. Red eyes rolled as they dimmed down from his anger to a cool blue. He dropped the gun on the counter and reached into his back pocket. A couple of $50 bills were left for the cowering bartender. That's for the damage. He grabbed an unopened, undamaged bottle from behind the counter and went to the exit. Sorry for the trouble. He stopped at the door and looked at the wailing gunman. Oh, and I'm not offended by being called a son of a bitch. I'm a proud son of the bitch. Ah, we feel the same. Ares smiled kindly at his mother. Quote ellipsis. I swear I will end you one day, Ares. Love ya too, Ma. He left the strip bar and popped the cap off of his beer, taking a swig before he grimaced. He tossed the bottle to the side and walked over to his car, a '67 Pontiac GTO convertible. He pulled off his doused and ruined shirt. He tossed it into the back seat with a frown on his face. He really liked that shirt. The outline of the words were orange. Yep, it's really Naruto. Piper sighed. Orange this, orange that, the identity of Naruto as a whole. He turned the keys in the ignition and pulled out of the gravel-filled drive. It wasn't until the tires hit asphalt that he floored it. He looked in the rearview mirror and gave himself a once-over for injuries. Tanned skin was unblemished, unmarked, and except for the jagged feral whiskers on his cheeks, a reminder of his stupidity when he was a kid, there wasn't a scratch on him. That's my boy. Frank had a pout on his face. This was so not cool. Hazel just patted his shoulder consolingly. His hair, however, usually blonde and unruly, was now damp and smelled like cheap alcohol. Gross. To distract himself from his soon-to-be sticky head, he cranked up the volume of the radio, his head nodded to the hard rock that woke everyone in the vicinity. Talia bobbed her head. I can get behind this. That's what she said. Talia, no. Jason said. He held his sister back before she could kick Leo's teeth in. Talia struggled in her brother's arms. I hate that joke. I figured. Just relax. Leo, stop laughing. I can't. Leo chuckled more. Not that there were a lot of people he could bother in the empty desert. Movement caught his eye and he barely managed to slam on the brakes as something swooped at him from the front. He ducked down and covered his head, shifting the gears and putting the car in park as he did. Something pressed down with a thump on his hood, and he looked up to see a girl, probably a few years younger than him, no more than 17 but no less than 15, with a glistening silver arrow knocked on her silver bow. A hunter. Nico blinked. Thou art my target, Griffin. Come and face death as only prey can. Zoe. Percy and Talia chuckled. Well, at least we know when this takes place. Artemis mumbled with a soft look. The arrow shot from her bow with a twang and he turned to follow it. It tore through the black wings of the monster it was aimed at. A black mass fell from the sky and landed roughly off the side of the road. He arched a brow and looked back at the girl. Nice shot. She aimed an arrow at him. Wow, rude. Piper asked. Bitch much. What? Artemis frowned. It is a bitch move. Aphrodite commented. The huntress glared at her rival. Thou are lucky that my lady requires me at camp. The girl scoffed as she lowered her bow and walked across the hood of his car, something that was extremely irksome. You know, I forget how much of a rude little brat she is. Apollo confessed, which got him a look from his twin. Hey, truth god. I'm not going to lie here. Thank you Apollo tilde. Aphrodite cheered with a smile. No prob. Artemis scowled. Towards the fallen monster. Camp. Last I checked, camp was 40-something hundred miles, that way, he said, pointing towards the northeast. The girl turned and glared at him for a moment before she returned to approaching the griffin. She pinned it to the ground with another arrow. Be happy thou are not my target, man. I must hurry and hunt the rest of the pack before I return to my lady. Quote. What, are you preparing for a role in a play? He asked. She would have done pretty good. Percy snickered as Talia could barely hold back her own laughter. He opened his car door and stepped out to look the vehicle over while his rock continued to blast. Turn that trash off. He looked up at the girl's cry with a scowl. Now she was dissing his music. Oh, no fuck that shit. Ares cheered. Fuck her up. He best not. Artemis thundered. Nightshade needs her peg knocked down. I understand you're all for girl power, Artemis, I am as well. But she was on such a high horse. Athena commented. A humbling would have done her some good. You tend to spoil your hunters. Artemis colored at her own sister betraying her on this. Listen, bitch, he said with a growl as he stormed around the hood of his car towards her. She had gained her own face of fury for the derogatory term he used. It was actually kind of cute, but he couldn't really appreciate that at the moment. What's this? Aphrodite tilted her head, a smile gracing her lips. Artemis frowned. Never going to happen. Now, this is Naruto after all. Even if he's Ares. Yeah. Wait, what's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Aphrodite waved the question off with a smile while Artemis looked worried. You were chasing a monster, I can deal with you running on my ride. You're a hunter, so I can deal with you dissing me because of my gender. But you don't ever, and I fucking mean ever, diss my tunes. Really not cool. Apollo frowned. What does thou plan to do about it, man? Amazing how a general term for a human sex could sound worse than a slur. Talia rubbed her face. It still amazes me that a lot of the hunters think it is one. I am so glad you aren't a feminazi. Jason told her. Trust me, I'll never be that bad. Leo snorted. The dark glare you gave me begs to differ. What was that, elf boy? I'm going to break that pretty bow of yours over your head. Her black eyes narrowed and the pretty bow was aimed at him with an arrow at the ready. I'd like to see thou try it. He growled and reached into his pockets with both hands, a set of brass knuckles slipped around his fingers before he pulled his fists out. Red eyes glared into hard black, their forms illuminated by the light of Artemis' moon. She released the bow and he ducked under the arrow. The sound of glass shattering made him realize that she'd hit his car. Fucker. Now she's just asking for a spanking. Phrasing. Aphrodite tittered at Ares' words. Artemis looked ready to explode at the couple. Enyo. He cried as he swung a right cross at her head, and bronze gauntlets with spiked knuckles suddenly covered his hands. Faces of pained men howled on the back of his hands as she avoided his punch. The wails made the girl to cover her ears and roll away, more distance now between them. Scream gauntlets. That's intriguing. Hephaestus confessed with a touch of interest. For close range, that's devastating one-on-one combat. Annabeth looked impressed. He started to turn in order to face her properly. One didn't put their back to an enemy, but turned and swung with a powerful left cross at the monster that leapt at him. The spiked knuckles shattered the griffin's beak, and the power behind his punch snapped the griffin's neck. The Black Panther-like body crumpled to the ground, the wings twitched once before it dissolved to dust. He's got some muscle, whoa. Leo blinked and gave Frank a quick look of worry. Some hunter. He couldn't help it, he felt like it had to be said. Call it the war god in him. The master antagonizer's voice was always barking demands in his ear. Frank suddenly felt kinship at once with this Naruto. Talk about a head case. Hermes grinned. Meh. Percy told him. You kids just don't get good comedy. The messenger god frowned. Occasionally, the god's favorite poem chanted in his head. Whenever you fight, you better always win. 'Cause the second you don't, I'm gonna kick her head in. My greatest quote. Ares nodded. Frank looked at his friends and mouthed, help me. Single quote. Let it be known that Ares was not the father of the year. Then again, it could be said that no god would ever hold that title. Personally, he couldn't give two shits if one did or didn't. He lived by his father's words, the motto of Cabin 5. It was a kill or be killed world he lived in. And he fucking loved every second of it. USA. USA. Ares whooped. Even when the arrow was shot into his ass. I think that's an Artemisism for a proposal. It is not. Artemis colored greatly at that, while the god snickered or laughed. Or fumed in Zeus' case. Ow. Fuck. Take a joke, bitch. Thou're lucky I didn't aim for thy head. The hunter's glare only built onto his anger while he pried the arrow out of his ass. That was the 5th time that happened to him. Stupid arrows. Maybe it's because you have too big of a butt. Leo smirked. Hey. Frank frowned. I wasn't sniping at you, dude. Quote ellipsis. Better not. Like you'd hit it, he said scathingly as he looked the arrow over. He held it out with a smirk. Here, something to remember me by. The hunter sneered at him. Pig. I'd love some, but all I've got on me is dried beer. He tossed the arrow behind him uncaringly and grunted as he walked back to his car. Thou're disgusting. And you're a bitch, so I guess we're even. Zoe really was the princess of Mount Bitchdom. Apollo confirmed. No, she wasn't. She was kind of forceful, Lady Artemis. Talia told her. She couldn't lie, while Zoe was a good person, rest her spirit in the stars. She just had the ability to rub people the wrong way, like a child of Ares. He bent over the passenger door and reached into the glove compartment to grab some nectar he kept in case he ever got injured. The gauntlets on his hands disappeared and returned to their hidden brass knuckle form. He popped the top off the bottle and grabbed his ruined shirt. Thank Olympus he took that field medic training Chiron offered. It made recovering from embarrassing injuries so much easier. He dampened the fabric with nectar before he put the top back on the bottle. Thou art. I should kill thee. Someone's at a loss words. Piper smirked. She got angry rather quick. Talia shook her head. Better women than you have tried. Most were better shots, too. He snickered at the aggravated growl the hunter released. Ah, this one had to be a veteran if she wasn't already filling him full of arrows. He'd never seen her when the hunters of Artemis were at camp, or if he did, he certainly didn't recognize her. Quote ellipsis. How could he not? The tiara gives it away. Percy pointed at Talia's head. It's like a beacon. It is not. Talia frowned at him. I think it looks nice, Jason said. Stop being a suck-up, Jay. He sighed as he applied the nectar-soaked fabric to the bleeding hole in his ass. Chalk up another boon to being a demigod. He got to heal himself before it got too painful or the adrenaline wore off. Mortals could suck his fat one, being a demigod kicked ass. So, What brings a bitchy hunter to the middle of fucking nowhere, USA? Such language. Hestia frowned. And I have to read it. Frank sighed. Ares glared at him. Just read, boy. He turned and pressed the nectar and alcohol-soaked fabric into the wound as he leaned against his car with his arms crossed over his bare chest. Huh, starting to get cold. Must almost be 2 in the morning if he was getting goosebumps. The hunter's eye twitched and her jaw clenched. She crossed her arms and huffed. What reason should I get? I am better off killing thee for the planet. I bet she's done it before, Nico said scathingly. Artemis didn't retort to that one. I should give you my name for the tombstone then. Name's Naruto. Spelled like this. Naruto tapped on his left shoulder, where the kanji for his name was inked into his arm. Naruto. What sort of nonsense is that? The hunter scoffed. She stuck her slightly upturned nose into the air. Sounds like an Oriental name. Thou are not from the Orient. Wow, racist. Frank asked with a frown. He took serious offense to that. He got more my looks. Bitch tilde. Ares sang. Artemis looked like she wanted to club him with her bow. Says you. It means, Maelstrom, Naruto said with a smirk. Maelstrom of kick-ass. The hunter rolled her eyes. Thou are no different than any other man. She makes it sound like we all came from the same place. Leo rolled his eyes. That's up for debate. Talia smirked at him. Chica, you so cold. I need a snuggie to warm up. Oh, believe me, sweetheart. I'm plenty different from other men. The hunter gave him a look of disgust and Naruto responded with a blown kiss. She opened her mouth to retort, but the sound of a shrieking roar cut her off. The two looked up and Naruto grinned as his eyes flashed red at the sight of several more griffins. Well, friends of yours, sweetheart. Do not call me, sweetheart, pig. I want bacon now. Ares frowned. Seriously, can she came up with a better insult? My kids could do way better. No, she can't. Talia snickered. The hunter snarled at him and she drew an arrow back. It flew up at the griffins at a great speed, but the black-furred and feathered monsters easily avoided it. The hunter cursed. I hadn't thought the nestlings would have grown so quickly so far south. Who cares how fast they grew? They want a fight and they got it. Naruto ran away from his car. He really didn't want to go through the trouble of stealing another muscle car, and grinned as several branched from the flock, or was it pack? Whatever, they were chasing him and that's all that mattered. Naruto turned and faced the griffins with his right fist brought back. His eyes gleamed an excited red that burned more intensely than the griffin's own. Come on, birdie. You want some. Come get some. Do not taunt them, fool. The hunter yelled after him as she staved off the 3 that flew circles around her. She had some neat moves with those hunting knives of hers. She was one of the best. Artemis sighed out. I think I could have taken her, Talia said. I think you just wanted to fix your bruised ego. Percy commented, earning an irked look from Talia. Enyo. Naruto threw his right fist forward seconds before the griffin's raven-like talons could reach out to grab him. Like the last griffin, Naruto's gauntlet-covered hand won out over the beak and neck. The black beak cracked and splintered from the spikes in Naruto's gauntlet. The head was forced down, driven into the dirt while the kinetic speed forced Naruto back several feet. Mega punch. Nico looked impressed. Seems so, Hazel said. She wondered if Frank could do that and her cheeks colored. That would be sort of cool. He grinned and looked at the other 2 griffins that roared at him as they flapped their wings. Come on then. Let's dance. Naruto turned at the hip with his right hand over his shoulder, fingers curled into a fist. His red eyes narrowed and he coiled up just a bit further. He wasn't a son of Athena, but he knew that speed plus strength equaled a whole lot of pain. He's a real genius. Quote ellipsis. You did not just say that. Athena frowned at her war-loving brother. And much like a compressed spring being released gave off a lot of force, Naruto's spinning backfist punch sent the griffin soaring back the way it came. He even gave a smirk to the hunter after his griffin collided into one of hers. Oh, he's playing with fire now. Percy chuckled. Hey. Leo frowned. That's my line, dude. Sorry, but I'm not sorry. Leo just glared at the son of Poseidon. Another shrieking roar had Naruto turn to the side, where the 3rd griffin of his group had decided to stop flying and tried to pounce on him. Naruto caught the talons in his hands and fell back. He drove his boots into the griffin's stomach and flipped the hybrid monster over him to land on its back and wings. Naruto reared his legs over his head and kipped up, a rather useful ability he learned from his time in camp. Next, Kung Fu 101. Annabeth bowed her head. Yes, Grandmaster Chase. Piper bowed her head, leading the girls to laugh. I'd be interested in that. Reina smirked at the two, one that Annabeth returned while Piper started to sweat a bit. Naruto faced the griffin as it got back to its feet and the two began to circle each other. Naruto kept his hands out wide while the griffin hissed and brought its wings up to appear larger. Naruto bared his teeth and snarled back at it. He was an instinctive fighter at heart, so it was easy to perform the "I'm a scarier predator than you are" dance. Percy cocked his head. Huh, so that's what that look means. Mars kids have it, too, Jason said. He gained a perplexed look. Not Frank, though. The muscle-bound teenager shrugged. I don't see the need for it. The griffin lost its patience first and leapt at him. Naruto brought his fist back at the ready, his other arm up to catch the monster's weight. He was severely disappointed when the griffin exploded into dust before it hit him. Naruto glared sourly at the hunter, her smirk proud and haughty as she lowered her bow. Thou are welcome, she said. Naruto's glare didn't let up, even though his red eyes turned back to blue. You bitch. That was my kill. First come, first serve. Artemis sniffed. Such a rude boy. That is thy problem, not mine. The hunter smirked at him once more before she began to collect the trophies the griffins left behind. Black fur pelts with feathers in them. What a lame reward, why not a golden egg? Naruto wouldn't mind raising his own griffin. That is so hard to do, greedy little things, Apollo said. Like shiny stuff too much. They wouldn't lay off me. Hermes chuckled. That was a fun day. Naruto grabbed the pelts of the griffins and threw them over his shoulder. He carried them back to the hunter and tossed them into her arms. She stumbled from the added weight and glared at him as he crossed his arms. There you go, sweetheart. Don't say I never got you nothing, Naruto said with a smirk. He walked back towards his car, only to stop and stare in disbelief. Silver arrows lined the entire left side of his car, the two tires flat and long deflated. Even the poor car scent dispenser had not been spared. Quote ellipsis. Okay, uber bitchy. Apollo frowned, earning a glare from his twin. No, seriously, that is. If you ever did that to my ride, I would seriously be pissed at you and not in a joking way. Naruto rounded on the hunter with murder in his eyes. Do you know what you've done? What? Did something happen to thy automobile? She asked innocently. The smirk on her face killed the fantasy of any real remorse he thought she might have had. What a shame. Perhaps thee should ensure it isn't in the way of crossfire next time thee gets into a fight. Skin her. I agree. Aphrodite cheered on her angered boyfriend. I doubt he could. Artemis scoffed. Naruto lifted his hands menacingly, as though he was going to strangle her, before he brought them down to his sides and seethed. You. Fucking. Bitch. The hunter glared at him and dropped the pelts. She stormed up to him and, before he could lift his arms, punched him square in the nose with a solid left punch. Naruto's head flew back and he grunted as he lost his footing. His head and recently healed ass hit the pavement, which elected a strangled yell that he managed to choke down. Naruto held a hand over his nose and grunted when a silver boot stomped onto his stomach. Stomp, 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 stomp. Evan, your son isn't that stupid. Athena chuckled as she enjoyed the sight. Talia shook her head. Zoe did have poor people skills. He deserved it. Artemis huffed. Talia just shrugged. Zoe sort of started it. The hunter huffed and gave him a final kick to the side before she stormed back over to the pelts she had dropped. Naruto groaned and rolled onto his uninjured side. He snorted blood from his nose and forced it back into place with a grunt before he got up and glared at the retreating hunter. Naruto turned, reached into his car, and grabbed the bottle of nectar. God fucking damn it. Naruto threw the cracked bottle at the ground, shattering the empty bottle on the street. He sent another glare to the hunter and debated whether or not he should try to kill her. Not worth it, Percy said. I think she could use a slap. Piper frowned. Why? Annabeth asked as Aphrodite beamed at her baby. She's just so rude. I get that you guys are supposed to hate men. But acting like a child about it. It's juvenile. Piper explained. Well, they do stay as little girls for the rest of their lives. So, immaturity is sort of going to happen, Jason said. Little girls. Talia frowned. Artemis looked irked by that logic. And coming from one of Aphrodite's daughters made it hurt even more. Deciding that it wasn't worth Artemis' wrath to get into another fight with the bitch, Naruto wrapped his arm around his side, to steady his cracked ribs, and began to hobble off towards his current home. His grandmother was going to throw another fit when she saw him stumble back into his house, covered in blood. Again. Who'd ya kill this time? Nobody, Granny. Leo said with a chuckle. Where dost thou think they're going? Oh, what the fuck do you want now? Naruto roared as he rounded on the hunter. She was carrying the pelts over her left shoulder and her bow was nowhere in sight. A glare was still on her face and it took all the self-control he had, which was not a lot, to not punch her back. You wanna kill me? You wanna keep fighting? Because those are the only reasons I can think of that would make you want to talk to me. The hunter rolled her eyes. If I didn't have to speak with thou, believe me I wouldn't. However, she shifted uncomfortably. Thou art the only demigod around and thou is sure to have more nectar and ambrosia at thy home. Ooh. Aphrodite smiled. Miss High and Mighty got an ouchie. Stop that. Artemis frowned. Stop what? That your girls aren't perfect. Enough, ladies, please. Hestia asked tiredly. The two goddesses huffed at each other, but did stop their bickering. What? You don't have any? Bullshit. Naruto snorted in disbelief, ignoring the pain in his shattered nose. He watched the hunter as an uncomfortable grimace crossed her face. An amused, yet annoyed, smirk crossed his face. No fucking way. Be silent. You don't have any nectar or ambrosia. Naruto chuckled. His chuckling turned into pained laughter. Oh, ho, it hurts to laugh. But it's the best kind of laugh. Ares chuckled. I thought Zoe's motto was to always be prepared. Talia knitted her brow. Isn't that the Boy Scouts? Percy innocently asked. The hunter laughed dryly, but still smirked since it was a decent joke. Cease thy amusement. The hunter snarled. She grimaced and shifted her right shoulder. Naruto glanced at it and saw a deep gash. A piece of cloth was tied over the wound but it had already bled through. Naruto grimaced as he debated his next move. On one hand, he did what his father's instincts were telling him to do and to leave the bitch high and dry. Ares approved, the war god said with 2 thumbs up. But risked Artemis' wrath if he did so. Fear the jackalopes, Artemis said coldly. On the other hand, he risked his father's wrath if he tried to help the girl. Weighing the odds in his head, eventually even the voice that sounded like Ares started to tell him that Artemis was much more frightening than the god of war. Smart boy. The huntress smirked. I beg to differ, but in this case, it would seem so. Athena agreed. Damn brat. Ares grunted. Naruto turned and resumed his trek home. He got several feet before he stopped and glared over his shoulder at the hunter. You coming or what? The hunter scowled back at him before she quickly caught up to him. They walked in silence for the next 2 miles until they made it into the small town that he called home in McCary, Texas. Hey-oh to my peeps. Leo waved. Where are the people? The hunter asked as they walked through the town square. I thought the entire country had been populated by man. Like I said, sweetheart, Naruto said with a small bitter smile as he led the hunter towards his home. Middle of fucking nowhere, USA. We got bars, cars, farms and tars, and that's it. Maybe 200 people in this town. Couple dozen out in the farms. And there's the McCary family, owners of the town property. The hunter scowled at him. Thou will not address me as, sweetheart. Well, you haven't really given me anything else to call you, sweetheart. It's either that or bye. Sweetheart sounds lovely, even if it's wasted on that uppity nightshade. Aphrodite sniffed in distaste. If thou finishes that sentence, thou will know the pain Zeus felt when his sinews were torn from him. Zeus blanched. He still had nightmares about that. Gross. Percy wrinkled his nose. Point taken, but you still haven't told me your name. Naruto pointed out. The hunter's scowl became more prominent as she thought about telling a male her name. I am Zoe Nightshade, lieutenant of Lady Artemis Hunters. Nightshade? Naruto asked, amused. He shook his head as he pushed the door to a 2-story house open. And you say my name is weird? He walked into the house. I'm back. Thy name is strange. Zoe said with a glower. She followed him into the entry hall and through the small living room to the kitchen. There was shuffling above them, which made Zoe look up. Thou does not live alone. He's got as sweet as a button granny. Leo declared. You've got to learn how to speak English. I tried to tell her that. Talia shook her head. Naruto said as he stumbled into the kitchen. He winced as he reached up into a cabinet and began to look around. Oh, come the fuck on. Stupid fucking old people. Stop messing with the layouts. Putting more fucking medication in the fucking cabinet. God damn, drug-addicted motherfucking. Zoe scowled at him. Thy mouth needs a cleansing with a fresh bar of soap. That's long-winded, but I agree with her. Hestia nodded sternly. Bite me. Naruto shot back. He grinned when he pulled his hand back and held a plastic bag of ambrosia. Score. Naruto set the bag on the ground and opened it up. Before he could pull a cube out, he froze when footsteps stomped down the stairs. Naruto closed the bag and shoved it back into the cabinet. Naruto. Do you have any fucking idea of what time it is, you dumb piece of shit? Real sweet, huh, Leo? Piper asked. Leo just shrugged. Zoe's mouth was agape at the language while Naruto hurriedly grabbed more modern medication and pulled it out. He paused for a moment before he slapped the pelts off of Zoe's shoulder. The hunter glared at him, but Naruto ignored it as he tucked his brass knuckles into his pockets and then fumbled with the painkiller's lid. Just what the fucking hell do you think you're doing at this hour, goddammit? Naruto turned to look at the old woman that stood in the doorway. Her hair was a platinum blonde, once a beautiful shade like his own but now far less so. She smelled like an old folks' home, a hospital, and alcohol. Her honey brown eyes narrowed in suspicion and her hand tightened around the handle of her cane. Are you trying to steal from your granny again? Quote ellipsis. No, the demigod said. They did not like the look of that cane. No, Granny Tsunade. Naruto rolled his eyes and set the bottle painkillers on the counter. Go back to sleep, you stupid old hag. Back to sleep. Oh, no, dipshit, I'm up now. Granny Tsunade did a double take when she saw Zoe. She turned back and glared at Naruto. And who the fuck is she? The old woman's cane came down and nearly cracked Naruto's skull open. Ow. You fucking crazy old bitch. Naruto whimpered as he held his abused skull. Granny Tsunade scowled at him and wagged her cane threateningly. Lying to your own grandmother. Your mother must be getting a noose ready in her cell. Ninja waifu is in jail. Apollo thundered. He glared at Ares. This is your fault. It's always my fault. That's bullshit, man. Naruto glared at the old woman. Stupid old hag. Ungrateful little shit. Granny Tsunade glared right back before she looked at the other occupant of the kitchen. Well, speak up, girl. Who are you? Zoe Nightshade, ma'am. Naruto smirked at the hunter's apprehension. No one fucked with Granny Tsunade, not even Ares. The war god blinked. What? And he tried to. The god of war wound up chewing on his bike's handlebars. Quote ellipsis. Wow, to a Granny Ares, just, wow. Apollo bit his fist as Hermes fell out of his throne in laughter. That's just sad. I feel shame for you. Athena remarked with a quirked lip. Ares gnashed his teeth at them as he seethed. Nightshade. The hell kind of name is that? You an Indian? Granny Tsunade inquired, squinting her eyes as she looked over the girl. Racist. Piper frowned. They're called Native American, you dumb old hag. Naruto grumbled as he got back to his feet. He sucked in air when the cane was whacked against his cracked rib. Gah. Sadistic old bitch. That is evil. Percy shuddered. He was glad his mom never did that to him. Stop being a rude little shit. Don't you know that you gotta watch your mouth when there's a lady in the house? Granny Tsunade scolded with another whack from her cane. And the sheriff called. I thought I told you to stop getting into fights. Fuck. Ow. Senile. Crazy. Ow. Bitch. I didn't. Shit. Start it. Naruto shot back as he tried to protect himself from her cane. You did something. Granny Tsunade scowled at the blonde young adult as she stopped her assault and then looked back at Zoe. She noticed the wound on her shoulder and rounded on Naruto. Her eyes were harder than steel, but ablaze with rage. Did you cut this girl, boy? He wished somewhat. Percy snarked. Naruto's eyes went wide and color left his skin. He may have tried to fight Zoe earlier, but he was running off adrenaline and anger. Clear-headed, he'd never get into a physical fight with any girl without any witnesses. What Granny Tsunade would do to him if she found out he ever did. Naruto's skin paled even faster as he shook his head. And no, ma'am. I love that look. Hera smiled. You do it all the time. Ares muttered with a shiver. Then why is she bleeding? Granny Tsunade's eyes were murderous. Car accident. Naruto blurted out before Zoe could speak. Got into a car accident. My fault. I should have watched where I was going. It was the girl's fault. Leo snorted. Jumping on a dude's ride. Not cool. Granny Tsunade's cane struck his cracked rib again and she nodded firmly while Naruto crumpled to the ground, shuddering in pain. Damn right. The old woman turned and gave a soft smile to Zoe. Come along dear, I'll get that looked at and fix it up in a jiffy. Zoe tried to pull away as Granny Tsunade grabbed her arm. Oh, no, thank you, but I just need some AMB. Amber, she just needs some amber, Naruto said quickly, shooting the hunter a, shut up or else, glare. He cradled his rib as he got to his feet once more. Granny Tsunade's eyes were on him like a hawk. Blood loss has made her delusional. She's speaking with thy, and thou, and thee. She hit her head. Talia laughed. That's a good one. I am not delusional, thou art. Zoe began, only to be cut off by a cluck of Granny Tsunade's tongue. Probably some head trauma. Come along, dear. I'll show you to the couch. Naruto. Get yourself cleaned up and get some clothes for our guest. Granny Tsunade ordered as she led Zoe into the other room. Naruto scowled and matched Zoe's glare when it was sent his way. It wasn't like he wanted the stupid bitch of a hunter to stay in his home either. It's clearly a violation of her oath. Oh well. The love goddess sighed. Looks like you'll have to make her another furry Artemis. I do not turn people into furries. Sure you don't. Naruto, get your ass moving. Yes, Granny Tsunade. Then again, it wasn't like he was going to argue about it. Naruto groaned as he went to the back toward his room to grab some spare clothes. He frowned as he walked past a hanging portrait of a red-haired woman in military fatigues standing behind a blonde boy with a swollen black eye, both smiling at the camera. Wait, Waifu is in the army, so why is Waifu in jail? Apollo thought aloud. Quote ellipsis. Pow. Frank surmised with a big frown. Nailed it. Ares scowled deeply, that was the part of war he actually hated deeply. All he wanted to do tonight was have a drink and get some entertainment. Stupid hunter. Got that right, Nico said scathingly. Talia gave him a look, but his glance just dared her to say something. Frank flopped the book down. Done. Hazel patted his shoulder with a small smile, one he returned. I think they'd be a cute couple. Aphrodite hummed. A coy smile spread across her face. Naruto tilde. Never. Artemis screamed. Never say never tilde.